15-year-old son is actually putting together a solar project for all of Riverside, and he's going to be presenting it to the board. And he was referencing the IRA Act to me. He's going to get someone else to pay for it. He's convinced. So you could bring up my slide. That's me. Can you do one more? I'm just going to talk briefly about the Oregon Special Education Cap. About 25% of Oregon's special education costs are going unfunded because of this cap, and it just causes havoc. It makes districts have to scramble for the money. Next slide, please. So what is the cap? It's a funded enrollment. Okay, it's a cap that limits state special education funding to 11% of the district's students, even if more than 11% are requiring those services. So for example, if you have 18% of your students are on IEPs, which are individual education plans, that means kids with disabilities that need to access their education through other services. So let's say you have 18%. You're still, as a district, only receiving 11% of that funding. So that impacts students. It produces resource gaps where just in the school they're having to struggle, they're having to scramble and split resources. It also impacts the districts. So I thought these numbers were interesting. They're probably a little small for you guys to see, but in 2022-23, the state provided $696 million for special education to the districts, but the districts paid over $1 billion. So that's $375 million that they had to come up with in other ways. It's often taken from other accounts that are used for other underserved populations. So we're disenfranchising more than just the children with disabilities. Next slide, please. It's kind of a complicated calculation system. There's 3 calculations they go through to come up with how much districts receive. I'm not going to go through them, but if you just look at that graph, you can see that this calculation produces wide variation. So, okay, the tallest one is Lake Oswego. They were receiving, this is I think 2021, they're receiving $11,000 for each of their special ed students. The bottom one that's hanging off the end there is Klamath Falls, and they're receiving, I think, $7,000. Westland was in the middle at $9,000. So the calculations are trying for equity, but it does not end up that way because the funding is not full, nothing's fully funded. Next slide, please. Briefly, I will say that Westland Wilsonville is unique in that it's an inclusion model, so children with disabilities are in the same classroom as their typically developing peers. It's sad that this is unique, but in the nation it is. We're generally still segregating our disabled students. But I, as in a lot of other parents, have moved here for this. Parents with children with disabilities often want their kids to grow up in the society, the same kind of society they're going to live in, so that they know how to function in that kind of a society. So Westland Wilsonville is getting a lot of people moving in for this. So if you look down there, our rates are 14% of our student population are children with, oh, thanks. Yes. So what I wanted to show about this graph is that Lowry Primary, this is only our primary schools because the graph got too big. Lowry Primary is the only one that's at 11%. All of our other primary schools are over, with Bolton, Willamette, and Sunset, I believe, being the highest. I think Sunset was at 20%. Next slide, please. Thanks. I am going to skip the end of this about what we can do. These are some bills that were in the legislation session last year. They did not pass. We're hoping that they'll come back reintroduced as a new number. You could go to the next slide. This is my last slide. It's kind of what we can do. I'm going to invite the director Sloop and Vital up just to talk about what they've done, but Westland Wilsonville Ed for All is prepared to set up a text to action. So when a bill is in committee and we need on that day people to sign in and click a button that says pro, the community cares about this bill, we can send that out to any of you who've signed up with us. We are prepared to write form letters, send them to your email box. All you have to do is sign it and send it on to the legislator to let you know when testifying would help. We can all wear our school colors and go down to Salem, and or we could do it on Zoom. And we'd like to keep you up to date with the bill. If it is introduced or whatever is introduced that we're going to try to back, we'll keep you guys up to date on that. So that's what we're prepared to do. I'd like to turn the rest of my time over to the Director Sloop and, go ahead, Vital.